Hi, my name is Dr. Daniel Fox, and I'm a licensed psychologist in the state of Texas, and I wanted to make a video on coping and managing during the holidays. A lot of my videos tend to be focused towards individuals with personality disorders, but I thought that this particular video would be good for everybody because we all sometimes have issues and concerns around the holidays, and it's hard to sort of manage a lot of those interactions and sometimes confrontations. So I was going to give you 3 survival tips for the holidays. So why don't we get started? And before we do, I just want to remind you that there is a link in the comment section to a worksheet that will pertain to a lot of things that we're going to talk about in this video. So you can download it and sort of reinforce a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about on the video today. So first and foremost is that remember your family stress and buttons. So a lot of family members over time, they know where your buttons are because typically that they put them there, right? And they know exactly how to hit them, when to hit them, and in what way to hit them to get you to respond. And it's important that you stay aware of that so that you don't fall into those same old traps and same old behaviors. Okay? And one of the first things that you're going to need to do is recognize that alcohol consumption will decrease your ability to develop new response patterns. Okay? So be aware of how much alcohol you're consuming. We all tend to consume more over the holidays. So it's important to be aware of that and the situation that you're in, because if you want to maintain your composure and your control over the situation, the more alcohol you consume, the harder that is going to be. But a survival tip, a direct survival tip, is that I want you to think about that family member or family members who tend to hit those buttons and really get you going. Okay? So imagine that family member. Then what I want you to do is practice letting those comments, whether they're backhanded or direct, letting those comments pass. Just let them go. Okay? Also, if you can't do that, you can leave the situation. You can step outside, you can go into another room, you can go in the restroom for a little while, take some deep breaths, slow down, calm down, and then re-engage. Okay. Another thing you can do is think of 2 or 3 appropriate responses. What could you say that wouldn't incite that family member who's hitting your buttons, and don't fall into teaching them a lesson? That becomes a big problem, because if this is the year that you think you're going to teach uncle such and such, aunt such and such, mom, dad, brother, sister, cousin a lesson, that tends to get you committed. It also gets your pride caught up, and it also gets you caught into sort of a dominant and winning frame of mind, and that gets really difficult because especially over the holidays with everything else that's going on and the stress that's also involved in that, it makes things a lot more difficult and tends to exacerbate a lot of situations, making them much, much worse. Another thing that you can do is try to sort of control your tongue as best you can. Try to hold it in as best you can. And I mentioned that a little bit, and let it pass, which is more of a sort of a breathing, just kind of letting it roll off your back. Whereas also kind of holding your tongue, right? Because what you put out there might be exactly what that family member is looking for. Okay? Because if they push your buttons and you don't respond, believe it or not, over the course of time, they'll stop pushing the button. They really will. They really will. Okay? And it's so important to keep your composure, to keep your cool. You don't have to fall into those old patterns. And that takes us to the next survival tip, which is be aware that we all regress when we get around family. We all regress to that 13-year-old boy or girl, 16-year-old kid, who was acting out, maybe we're having other problems or other issues that were going on, and you feel like you're still perceived as that young kid, even though as an adult you have much more power and control over yourself, you have much more power and control over your life, but we tend to get stuck and regress. We all do it. I do it. You do it. Everyone I know regresses a little bit. But when we're aware of it, we can control that regression so it hits us much less. So when we tend to regress, think of some of those behaviors that you engaged in as a kid and don't do them. It's because some of these old behaviors are default behaviors. Be aware of that. You don't have to go to your default behaviors. You don't have to go back to that 13-year-old kid, that 16-year-old kid, because that kid probably didn't have the same coping strategies and life experience that you do now. So use that technique, or maybe they haven't seen this video, Okay? So there's a lot of things that you can do to help yourself. Okay? And you don't have to fall back to those old regressive behaviors. Also, which also links with the first survival tip, which is think about appropriate response patterns too. That if you feel yourself, start those old feelings starting to come up, right? What can you do? How can you behave? Can you leave the situation? Can you go into another room? Can you let it pass? Are there other things that you can do? Think of alternate patterns, right? Can you go to the store to get maybe some chocolate or milk or whatever it may be, just so you can leave the situation for a little bit? And that slides us into the third survival tip, which is be aware of sensory overload. And during the holidays, there's so much going on for all of us. And we get this sensory overload, but we keep pushing through it, pushing through it, pushing through it. And as we're pushing through it, we get more and more exhausted, more and more fatigued. And what happens is we become more fatigued, more tired. It's harder for us to control our behavior, control our tongue, and we end up getting into those confrontations with family members or sometimes coworkers, friends, whoever it is. So be aware of sensory overload. And when you experience that sensory overload, you start to feel that sense of overwhelmed. What you can do is you can leave the situation, take a break. Just like we've been talking about. You notice that there's a theme, right? Is that taking a break, stepping away, not internalizing some of the things and experiences that you're having about teaching other people lessons or, engaging with them or falling into the old traps. You don't have to do that. You can do things differently for yourself, okay? Another thing is you want to engage, step out, re-engage. Okay? So when you engage in the situation, you notice that you're starting to get a sense of feeling overloaded. Then you're going to step out of the room. Like I said earlier, go to the bathroom, go outside, whatever it is, but leave that situation that is so tense and is so sensory overloaded. Because the more sensory overload you have, the less control we have over our thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and we tend to have an immediate reaction. Okay? So you want to be aware of that, going to another room, be aware of who else is in that area, who can you trust, who can you confide in. Also maybe if hopefully you have someone in your family or your work environment who you connect with, you can go to that person, get a little bit of support, and then if you have to re-engage. But recognize that you control the situation. Okay? So just a brief recap about those 3 survival tips, which is plan your response when those buttons are being pushed. Also, fight the urge, right, to regress back to that 13, 16-year-old kid. Okay, now as an adult, we have a lot more choices for ourselves. We have a lot more options. And then prepare for that sensory overload that it comes with the holidays. And all of us experience that. So if all of us experience this stress, we can all develop new ways of dealing with the stress and pressure and doing it differently for ourselves during the holidays. You can't control the holidays, but you can control your response to them. And that's really important. And I hope that that's what you take away from this video today, is that you can control the stress and pressure that's associated around the holidays. You really can. And that starts by using these 3 survival tips. And I hope that they've been helpful for you. Please go to my website if you want to learn more about me and the different videos that I put out. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. And then please post any comments below that you might have or any topics that you'd be interested in me addressing. And I really appreciate your time, and I hope you have a great holiday. And I wish you all the best. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.